Okay, so today we're going to do how to tell if I'm Enneagram Type 1 versus Enneagram Type 3. Again, I've got some notes that I saved on a zip drive that I'm just going to kind of use to guide my conversation with this. Enneagram 1 and Enneagram Type 3, I don't know, like, if that's a mistype that commonly occurs for you guys, but I have found on more than one occasion that I'll kind of teeter between those two sometimes with people. They can look a lot alike. The biggest reason that Enneagram Type 1 and Enneagram Type 3 can look alike is because they both tend to have an air of emotional detachment about them. They're both very logical, very competent, and they're both very goal-oriented. I would say right off of the bat, one of the biggest ways to tell if you're dealing with, or if you yourself are an Enneagram Type 1 or an Enneagram Type 3, is if your focus is just on the goal and you don't care how you make it happen, but you know you're going to make it happen, that's indicative of being Enneagram Type 3. Enneagram Type 1, the goal is important, they're working towards that, but the process or how they get to the goal is equally as important. They're not going to sacrifice the process just to get to the goal. The process in and of itself for a 1 is almost part of the goal. With Enneagram Type 3, the goal is the goal. They're going to cut corners. They're going to do whatever they have to do to get to the goal. The only time for a 3 that I would say that that's not going to be the case is if they know that the goal is going to be assessed by others in terms of how they achieved it. In that case, they're going to be a little bit more picky, I think, about procedure because they know that they have to be. But in instances where the end result is not assessed based on how they came to it, I think that they would be willing to let that go. So those are just some starters. Why do they look similar? And probably one of the biggest differences, it's one of the things that I look for. Let me jump into my other list here that I put. Another good way to tell is if, especially in terms of like problem solving or achieving a goal, is if you are a 1 on the Enneagram, your focus is going to be on how can I make this the best that it could possibly be. I mean, you're a 1. Your focus is on perfection. It has to be the best. Nothing less than that is going to do. A 3 doesn't necessarily need it to be the best that it can be. Threes, I guess what I'm trying to say is they tend to be more logical in their approach. You could give a task to the same task, and you could assign a 1 and a 3 to work together to complete this task. And the problem is there are some issues with completing the task that have come up, and this is why you've given it to them to work on, right? So it's kind of like, well, these are these issues, so you need to figure out how to solve these problems here so that we can get to this end result, okay? A 1 is going to take every issue, every problem that comes up, and handle it one at a time, and they're not going to move on until they know that it's done and it's done right and it's flawless, okay? And it's a hang up for them. It's like, we can't think about that right now because we haven't even perfected this one yet, right? A 3 tends to be a little bit more practical in the sense that they could assess the problems that are preventing them from completing the goal, and they could say, this is something that I could work with. This is something that it's either going to take too much time for me to solve, too much money for me to solve. It's not really necessary. I could kind of retweak this a little bit so that we wouldn't even have to worry about that. But I need to get this done, right? I need to figure out how can I make this as impressive as I can make it and expend as little unnecessary effort as possible. Does that make sense? So that's another difference. 1s, I think, almost don't know when to let things go in terms of goal achievement and in terms of perfecting things. They just get hung up on details that don't matter. There's a point when we have to be able to say that that this doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's going to be okay. This is something that we just can't do anything about. I have a really good example to compare and contrast those two, but I'm wondering if I should use it. It's another one of those questionable examples, as most of my examples are. I'm not sure if I'm thinking about it. I'm not going to use it. I won't. Man, all of my notes kind of sound the same. I write all these points down, and then I realize that what I'm doing is basically making the same point, and I'm just saying it in 8 different ways. So I've basically written the same thing over and over again, just with different synonyms. Half of this list I just covered. Oh, this is a good one. The difference between type 1 and type 3. While they both do tend to be a little bit more emotionally detached, and by that I mean that they're not making decisions necessarily based on emotion, or at least it won't appear that way to you on the surface, you're going to be able to tell that you can kind of read the emotions on 1s a little better than you can on 3s. Especially if we're talking about frustration. Like if 1s are frustrated, they're probably not going to come right out and tell you, because that's not a nice thing to do, and nobody likes dealing with negative emotions, and they don't want to be thought of as the wet blanket or the stick in the mud or whatever. So they're probably not going to say it out loud, but you can tell. I mean, if you know a 1, I don't know, maybe if you are a 1, maybe you don't know that you're easy to read this way, but I've never met a 1 that it wasn't easy to see when they get frustrated. I mean, they're not very good at hiding it. They try really hard not to show it, but in that trying, they're showing it. You know what I mean? 3s, I don't even know how to describe this to you guys. They're just really, really good at just not showing you what they're feeling. I mean, they are the masters of disguise, for lack of a better expression. They just are. I don't even really know how to put words to that. And again, if you are a 3, I don't know if you know that you do this. If you know a 3, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. How it's just hard. They have to come out and tell you what they're feeling. Otherwise, I mean, you're just kind of left in the dark to kind of guess, because they have a really hard time, I think, staying super in touch with that. See, here's the thing. This is the difference. 1s are a little bit more in touch with their emotions because they want to be. You have to understand, 1s are thinking repressed, right? They're doing dominant, feeling supports doing, and for a 1, they use that feeling to kind of keep them on the move, to keep them perfecting, to keep them doing, because they know what the ideal is, they know what they're working for, and they have feelings about that. Those feelings are often feelings of frustration and dissatisfaction. They experience the feelings, and then they'll say, I need to do something about this, and then they do something, and they're like, that makes me feel better. I like that. I've just made something better. I should keep doing this. And so it's kind of this cycle for them. So 1s are a little bit more in touch with their feelings because feelings help them. They may not necessarily be pleasant feelings, but they believe that the feelings help them. They may not know how to express them. They may not know how to cope with them. But feelings, whether 1s have ever given attention to this or not, they drive very much their actions. 3s have a really hard time getting emotional, even with themselves. And I'm not even talking about other people. That's a whole other ball game for 3s. I mean, you're asking something entirely different of them at that point. I think that for 3s, I'm not a 3. This is kind of the language that I would use to describe what I see in them. I think that perhaps emotions are really hard for a 3, and I think that they try really hard not to feel their emotions, because emotions are to 2s, 3s, and 4s, emotions are indicative of reality. I know that I talked in my last video about Enneagram Type 2. They live predominantly out of emotion, and life to them is what they feel. If it feels bad, then it must be bad. If it feels good, it must be good. That hurt my feelings. For a 2, it's kind of like, that person said something and it hurt my feelings. Therefore, that person is a bad person. They're a mean person. I couldn't be friends with them. I don't want anything to do with them. Well, that's not true. But for a 2, what they feel is what reality is, right? There's some growth and development that has to come with realizing that that's not the case. I want you to understand that that way of thinking is a core trait for all of the types in the heart triad, type 2, type 3, type 4. Not just 2, but it's not as evident for 3s because 2s are using what other people feel to help them define their reality. 4s are using what they feel to help define their reality. 3s also use what they feel to help them define reality, but they don't like that, so they just shut off the feelings. Because when 3s, I think when they sit and kind of deal with those feelings, the feelings of emptiness isn't the right word. I don't think. If you're a 3 and you think emptiness is the right word, I mean, say so, but I don't think emptiness is the right word. Directionless, I don't think is the right word either. Worthlessness is a better word. That's a good word. That's the word. Worthlessness. Their emotions, I think, ultimately tend to lead them to, and I'm not talking about topical emotions, I'm talking about real emotions. When they sit and they grapple with the things that they put off. You know what I mean? You guys know what I'm talking about. Those emotions for type 3, I think, tend to lead them down this road of, if worthlessness is too strong of a word, I think it at least leads them into a place where they start questioning their worth. A lot of identity related questions for sure. You know, who am I? Why do I have any value? Why would you want me instead of all these other people? Do you know what I mean? Like, why would you pick me over them? Why would you love me over them? That kind of a thing. So, emotions, you know, and that's because 3s, I don't even think they realize that they think that their emotions are reality. I think it's something that they learn very young how to tune out of. You know what I mean? And by the time they've just kind of gotten into that unconscious swing of not even feeling them anymore, you know, they haven't even had time to realize that's what they're doing because they've developed the defense mechanism before they've cognitively developed enough to process through that. Which, by the way, commercial for the Enneagram is why the Enneagram is such an awesome tool, because it takes, the Enneagram almost, in my mind and in my language, I would say takes you back to maybe that primal place, you know, when you were wounded at your youngest. Do you know what I mean? And it kind of helps you unpack the things that you needed to unpack. The stuff that you didn't have time to unpack because it happened so quickly and you started piling, you know, personality on top to save yourself. The Enneagram helps you get up past all of that. So that's another reason why I'm like totally in love with this tool. So anyways, the point of this is to say, I think that there's a little bit of that there for 3s, that unconscious belief that, what I feel is reality, and when they get real with their feelings, their deep feelings, I'm not talking about topical stuff. Again, I think that it leads to questions about worth and identity, and that's the stuff that scares them. So they just don't feel. They just don't feel. They don't feel it. Why? Why? Do you know what I mean? Just why? Also, I would also say, if you're a 3, another reason that you probably don't feel, and another reason why it's so easy for you to detach, is because you're also an aggressive type. When you're an aggressive type, I don't think that you have to spend as much time with your emotions. You know, for the rest of us, I know for me, I'm a 6, I'm a dependent type. For me, my emotions are key to helping me process the situations that come up in my life and they're key to making my decisions. I mean, I need my emotions to help me out a little bit. They motivate me. They'll stop me. They act as barriers for me. I need a lot of guidance and a lot of direction, and my emotions tend to help me with that, so long as I don't rely on them too heavily. But when used appropriately, I use my emotions. But threes, when the belief and the understanding and the feeling and the experience has always been that you're so competent that you know how to make things work for you, you put your hand to things and they just happen. It's like you're able to just so easily figure out how to manipulate things to make them work. When that's all that when that's your life experience, you don't need any other things like emotions. You don't need deep intellectual thought. You don't have to have counsel from a bunch of different people. You don't need policies and procedures to tell you, are you doing a good job? Are you on the right track? You just kind of have this magic to you, if magic is the right word, that allows you to show up in a situation and assert your competency. And if you're a 3, to assert your charm, to use the skill that you have to read people, which you do have, and things just unfold for you. It's almost effortless. I have one of the ladies that I work with right now at one of my jobs is a 3 on the Enneagram, and I've been teaching her the Enneagram. She hadn't heard about it until she met me, and so she's kind of been exploring her 3-ness a little bit. And one of the things that she has said to me, even before I taught her the Enneagram, was that she doesn't know why, but it's like things just happen for her in life, and it's like she doesn't have to try. And she's noticed that that's not the case for most other people. It's like if she's in this has happened to her. She'll go to like, a concert or something, or some event where like a famous person is going to be there, and they're the center of attention and they do what they're doing, and she's in the lobby with, hundreds to thousands of other people, and the person, whoever it is, the singer, the public speaker, will like single her out. They'll just see her from across the room, and they'll just be like, I need to know that person. I need to talk to her. And they go and they pull her aside and they introduce themselves, and she'll develop a professional relationship with them, and she's done nothing. She's just minding her own business. That's very much part of being a 3. I also noticed that tends to happen with 7s and 8s as well, although there are some nuanced differences. But this is another way that you can tell 1 and 3 apart, by the way. 1s don't have this happen. 1s have to earn their image that they have. 3s, I don't know. It just kind of happens for them. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you guys spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just everything that you do is done to perpetuate the image. Alone, in private, the things that you do are done to perpetuate the image so that, but I don't think it's conscious for you. I think you just started doing it because at some point down the line, in the past, it saved your ass and you were like, well, this works, so I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? So anyways, that's just another observation. That's another reason why I think 3s tend to be so emotionally detached, why they're really good at that, because emotions, they just don't need that guidance. It's like, why do they need their emotions to tell them, where they're going? They don't need that because life just happens for them. You see what I'm saying? That's why 3, 7s, and 8s are feeling repressed. It's not the reason why, but I believe that that's one of the reasons why. So add that to the list. Oh. Go away. I don't want this on my screen. Oh, here's the difference. 1s will tend to have a sense of humility to them, because that's the right thing to do. That's the proper thing to do. It's not good to appear arrogant or full of yourself or that kind of a thing. 3s, and I'm not saying that 3s like intentionally try to appear arrogant, but you can, like, 3s carry a sense of confidence about them, and you can tell. Now, of course, there are some threes that are, a little more on the unhealthy side. I have a cousin that I'm related to. She is a three that's a little more on the unhealthy side, and she'll make statements like, she's made statements to me in the past like, oh, well, you're just jealous of me because I have a better figure than you, and you're heavier than me, and so you're jealous, and it's okay. I would be jealous of me if I were you too. So you'll get threes that are on an unhealthier level, and they'll say things like that. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but they do tend to carry just kind of this sense of confidence about when threes. I mean, I can almost always spot. I don't even have to meet them. If I'm at a shopping mall, I can sit at a table in the food court and watch people go by. And I'm telling you right now, I can name anytime a three goes by. I can almost always name them. I don't have to know this person, because even the way that they carry themselves. I mean, they're always holding themselves upright. They're looking around. They hold their head up. They're going to meet you in the eye with their gaze. They don't look down. They don't look down at their feet. Their body movements tend to be very specific, very powerful. They're very much kind of in their space, and it is their space. When they speak, they tend to speak in very direct, very firm ways. They have, maybe not loud voices, but they have stable voices. They don't speak in a wavering fashion, if that makes sense. So, that's another way that you can tell. Ones don't draw that kind of attention to themselves. Their energy is significantly less. Ones are going to look to you to help define them. Threes won't. Well, they do. They just don't realize they do. That's a whole nother issue. So there's another example. When you make them angry, this is another way to tell the difference. Okay, first of all, the things that they're going to get angry about are entirely different. Ones will get angry because the right thing wasn't done. Ones get angry because you didn't follow the exact procedure to open the store. Ones get angry because they gave you the to-do list before they get home, and they've come home and there's still two things that didn't get done. Ones are angry because they can tell that when you vacuumed the floor, you didn't pull the little wand off and do the corners and the, trim or whatever, okay? Ones are angry because you implied that they didn't do something completely, that they did less than a perfect job, when they know for a fact that they gave 100% and you're the one that doesn't most of the time. So how dare you call them out when you slack off on just about everything that you do, but they're the ones that stay late, that don't ask questions, that volunteer to do the extra work, that come behind you and pick up your mess, and you have the audacity to point out the one thing they didn't do. You see what I'm saying? There's almost a level of impersonalization there. It's almost like the things that they get upset about, it's almost like they're not personal things. Threes when threes get upset, it's like it's a personal thing, whether you intended it to be or not. And they, you can insult their mom or, I don't know, their political stance, whatever. But when you insult something that they consider to be a core piece of their identity, they tend to get, they can get pretty hostile. First of all, they're in a lot of denial. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know me. That kind of a thing. There's more pushback from them. Ones get angry. They get indignant. They're a little bit more resentful. Again, as with any other emotion that a one would express, it's very subdued. It's more of a repressed emotion. Threes have no problems. When you cross the line and you start threatening that sense of identity, they're going to be a little bit more forceful, a little bit more abrasive, if that makes sense. So, in other words, ones tend to get really upset about the things that seem really impersonal, task-related things, right? And Anger is expressed in a very subdued, held back. I mean, at the most, you may get an irritation. Every now and again, ones will kind of have like a volcanic explosion moment, and then they kind of feel terrible because that wasn't the right thing to do, you know, and now you're going to think that they're a bad person, so they better go apologize, and they can't do that again, and from now on, it's like contain, contain. Threes are fine. You can debate the information with them all you want. You can disagree with them all that you want. That's fine. They know that they're right. They're going to prove to you that they're right. They're just going to show you that they're, you know, that they're going to outperform. They're going to use the information to outperform you anyway. So they don't really care, right? But once you start saying the things that are a little bit more personal, something that they identify with as, you know, as being part of who they are, they're going to get pretty abrasive about that. There's a lot, and you may even be right. You know, I've tried to confront, I've had a couple of threes that were a little bit more on the unhealthy side, and I've had to talk to them about some of the external things that they're taking on, and just my concern about identifying with things that don't give you any identity. I mean, I could do a whole nother YouTube video on the dangers of that. But it's a concern that I have for threes because it's a trap that they tend to fall into without realizing that they're falling into it. And anytime that I've ever had to provide any pushback, and I will push back, I'm not mean about it, and I don't get personal, although they're going to take it personally. But I am going to say what needs to be said in as loving a way as I know how. It doesn't go over well with threes. Threes are some of the people that I have the hardest time with because I mean, God has to get in there and work on their heart before I can do anything. And I mean, that's true with anybody, but myself included, but they're pretty difficult to talk to. I almost let them come to me now because I'm not even going to bother pointing it out in them because they just have such a hard time facing the fact that all of this external stuff and all of the ways that they've been selling themselves for all of these years. You know, they're selling themselves to you, but they're selling themselves to themselves, right? They're lying so much to everybody else that they believe it. And it's really hard to kind of let go of this idea that perhaps this person that I always thought I was isn't who I am. You know, that's a scary thing. I get that. Anyways, you know, especially I think with the approach that I have in that you aren't the things that you do. You aren't the accomplishments that you've made. All that you are a child of God. That and only that is your identity. You are what God, or I should say who God says you are. Nothing more, nothing less. And when you're someone who has spent your entire life believing that who you are is what you can do and what you can accomplish and the successes that you've had and what you can achieve, your competency, it's really, really scary when somebody comes along and says, hey, did you know none of that stuff is you? In fact, who you are is entirely dependent upon what this person over here says, and all that person over there says is that you belong to them and they love you. That's a disorienting thing for threes that aren't ready to hear that, I think. I'm getting a little bit off topic here. I don't even know how I got onto this. Yeah. I mentioned this. I will say, I know I've already said it. I'm just going to sum it up. Ones suppress their feelings. Threes literally detach. There's a difference. And I'm sure you guys understand that by now. I've kind of gone into it a little bit. Enough that you should. Trying to decide. I don't think I even have enough time to go into the rest of these points. I'm probably just going to end it here. Anyway, so I'll come back and we'll continue doing this series. I've already gotten a couple of requests to compare two different numbers, so I'm going to go chronologically and work them in that way. So just keep an eye out for the ones I do. And again, if you see a pair that I don't do, like if I get through all of the Enneagram Type 1 videos and I didn't compare one with another number that you wanted to see, let me know and then I'll go back and do that. Otherwise, I'm just going to go chronologically to cover all the ones that we need to cover. Okay? Thanks.